Well, we'll talk about polymers and plastics. And plastics, of course, that's well-known stuff for you, right? Plastics are human-made materials which can be formed into any kind of shape, and they're some of the most common objects in our daily lives. But what are polymers? Polymers are simply the molecules out of which plastics are made. Everything is made out of molecules, and the molecules that plastics are made out of are really very, very special. They have some unique properties, and I'll tell you about them halfway through my talk. But let's start with plastics. You know, plastics are so common that people take them for granted, and certainly they're not considered high-tech objects, right? On the other hand, just think of a high-tech object like a computer. Would you be able to use your computer if you had to plug it in with a cable that looked like this? You know? What would we do without plastic insulation, right? We wouldn't be able to use any electrical equipment, no electronics, nothing. Well, these days, plastics aren't just passive insulators in terms of electricity. Scientists have been able to develop new kinds of polymers and plastics that are electrically active, that you can make transistors out of them, or lasers, or light-emitting diodes, or photocells. And these things can be processed just like regular plastics. You can dissolve them in some solvent and print them on a plastic sheet. You can actually stamp them on big pieces of plastic. You can use an inkjet printer to print them. And you get advantages like what you see here. You have a flexible sheet with all kinds of electronics, and these things are going to affect our lives in the future. There are going to be all kinds of fun products coming out of them. The first one that is going to be in the market probably next year is electronic books. You're going to have basically just a thin sheet of plastic like this, framed of course and solid, and you will tap on it and you're going to see the page of a book. And you tap again, you see the next page, and you can read an entire book or 100 books, all of them just sitting on one sheet of plastic. You can have essentially a library on one sheet of plastic. Now, the ultimate goal is to be able to make a plastic computer, something that would be just a thin sheet of plastic and would have the keyboard and the screen. You'd be able to roll it and put it in your own pocket. Well, that's still a few years away. It will look like a fat pen, something like that, but you'll be able to pull out the handle, you'll have a small plastic piece, you can clip it and make it stay out and tap and do some rather rudimentary calculations. But very soon we hope that we're going to have plastic computers. One of the advantages of plastics is that you can mold them and shape them into any size and any shape. So in Europe, there are already billboards and, you know, street signs made out of them. And it won't be long before you may decide to use these kinds of materials as wallpaper in your living room. And then choose one day, do I want to look out at the Eiffel Tower, or do I want to look at a peaceful forest scene or the ocean or whatever? You'll just click on it, just as you change your desktop on your computer. Well, not only can you make plastics in very large sizes, but you can also make them very, very small. And because they can take any shape you want, they are going to be on all kinds of products. And these are the things that are going to affect our lives very, very significantly. Plastics can be shaped into all kinds of shape, but not just rigid shapes like that. They can also be made into fibers. This is a soda bottle, as you all recognize. It's made out of a plastic we call polyester, but you also have heard of polyester in clothes. It's, you know, most clothes that we wear are usually blends of polyester with cotton or with wool. So just as you can weave plastics into fibers, you can do the same thing with these new electronic plastics. So what people are trying to do is weave them in a special way, so wherever the fibers intersect, you can have an electronic element, like a transistor or like a light-emitting diode. And then, in a few days, you may be able to have electronic clothing. You may decide, you know, I'm tired of this dress in blue, how about if I change it to red? Now, that may sound simple and frivolous, but there are going to be other things that will be much more important, and one of them is called chameleon clothing. What does that mean? The army is very interested in that. To be the same kind of electronic clothing, but on your back you're going to have a tiny computer camera or more, it's going to record the scenery behind you, and it is going to project it onto your clothing. So you will blend with the background just like a chameleon. And when you move around, of course, the scenery will change in front of you. So other than your face, you'd be almost invisible. And as I said, the Army is very interested in that. Well, these are just some examples of the, fun and fascinating things that are coming from these new electronic plastics. So I'll just mention a couple of examples, say in the field of medicine. Just think of angioplasty, right? Hundreds of thousands of lives are saved every year because of angioplasty. If you've had a heart attack or you have clogged arteries, people insert a very thin plastic catheter, goes all the way to the clogged artery. There is a thin plastic balloon at the end. It's inflated, opens up the artery, and does the job. Think about the tens of thousands of lives that are being saved by colonoscopies these days. Can you imagine colonoscopy without a flexible plastic instrument? These things didn't exist before. Think about all the implants that we have in our bodies, knee joints and hip joints. These are generally made out of plastic and metal. Think about artificial skin, which actually exists, and people are trying to perfect it. This is a thin plastic sheet that you can put on burn victims. It does a number of things. First of all, it protects the area from infection. It allows the skin underneath to grow. It nourishes it. It provides a scaffold for the cells to grow. And what we're trying to do is actually make this stuff essentially be absorbed or degrade and disappear as the new skin comes up. And that really is saving, lives already. And then